Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm excited you're here, and if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for joining me. I hope to give you a great book review of Red Rising. If you're interested in storytelling and art and filmmaking, acting, really anything creative, stick around and maybe you'll enjoy some of the other videos I put on this channel. That being said, let's jump right into my review of Red Rising by Pierce Brown. There's several books in this series. I've just read the first one, and I have thoughts. So what I'm gonna do is give you a brief kind of summary of the beginning and of the main character. And as I lead into spoiler territory, I'll give you warning. So if you wanna read it, you won't feel spoiled. And after I talk about like the plot and the characters and stuff, I'll dive more into my analysis of whether I enjoyed it or not, or how much so, and if I'll be continuing the series. I would like to say, before I jump into the summary, I do love this book cover. Red's my favorite color, so it's kind of understated, but it's elegant and simple, and I think it's a great cover. Anyway, on to the summary. So it's set on Mars in the future, and we're following our main character, Darrow, who is a driller. I think they call them helldivers in the book, and they're mining on the planet for a specific resource to help terraform the planet so that they can make it livable. So this is all Darrow has ever known his whole life, is that Earth is dying or has been dead or is about to die, and he's been living underground on Mars. He's never even been to the surface of the planet. They've got all these like tunnels and little homes built in like caves into the planet. So they dwell underneath the surface, they drill into the surface because they've been doing this for, again, he's 16, I think, roughly at the beginning, but they've been doing it for a long time and trying to save humanity. That's all he knows is it's a terrible job, it's hard work, but it's for the sake of humanity. That's kind of the general summary of the beginning of the book, and you get into the thoughts of Darrow and that he doesn't really like doing it, but he's really good at it. And Pierce Brown describes him as having like very dexterous like hands and fingers, like he can operate the machine really well. And there's an example early in the book that proves this point. He does something very, very dangerous, but is able to succeed in doing that. And there's a potential reward for it in terms of resources, like better food and medicine, things like that. So that's kind of it for the summary of the first part of the book, because there's kind of a twist early on. So if you're afraid of spoilers, you might want to click away. So you've been warned. I would say come back though, because I love to discuss these things with you guys and share my thoughts with you. So we come to find out that there's actually a lot of people already living on the surface of Mars, and they're categorized by different colors. So that's another reason why it's called Red Rising, is Darrow belongs to the Reds. Reds are the lowest class of society. And there's also different like tiers within each color, and golds are at the highest of society. So you got everything. You've got grays and I think is it brown or bronze, but they've got and they've got nicknames like tin pots for like grays, I think. Each color also kind of has a specific purpose of what they serve in society. Gold's just being the upper echelon, the elite, the super rich, the super powerful, the genetically modified and augmented to have, better physiology. So they're taller, they're stronger, they're more beautiful, everything. So again, without trying to get into too much spoiler territory at the moment, the idea is kind of like the golds are, the Roman Empire. He's taking a lot of those ideas and themes from the Roman Empire and putting them into this story. That doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing, it's just kind of what it is. So without getting into all the nitty-gritty details, Darrow gets in trouble with the higher-ups because Io, his wife, again, very young, but it's culturally a thing, like on Mars, if you're in the tunnels to get married young. So easiest way to put it, Darrow and Io break the rules, and because of that, they're gonna be punished for it. Well, then Io sings this song that's not supposed to be sung, and the penalty is death. So this is part of the driving force for the character of Darrow. Anything that he does from now on is motivated by the fact that he's just so enraged by this. And shortly after this happens, we find out that there is a resistance. We knew that there were some rebels who were doing dangerous things and blowing stuff up, but Darrow didn't really understand what the purpose was behind all of it. But now he's found out that they're a resistance group against the golds. And so he's not really gung-ho about being a part of it per se, but he's just kind of drafted into it. And I think part of that is because they see that the death of Io would be motivation for him to want to have revenge against the Golds. Well, they're right and wrong kind of at the same time. Darrow seems, at least to me, kind of flippant on the fact, like he wants to avenge Eo's death, but he doesn't care about all this stuff. Like, he's amazed by the fact that there's cities on top of Mars and there's all this craziness that he didn't realize was out there. And so part of him is like, yeah, tear it all down, but all he can think about is her. And so his motivations are kind of all over the place, at least it seems to me. But doesn't matter because the plot moves forward. And so he's kind of trained up by these people and, again, physically augmented because they want him to infiltrate the Golds. Part of the reason, again, why it's called Red Rising. Literally rising out of the ground, rising up to the level of the Golds to try and overthrow everything. So they have to genetically, augment him and make him taller and stronger, and they've got to teach him things because they're going to get him into this academy where he can start, because he's young, and get an apprenticeship with a high-ranking family or a house, and maybe a commanding position like a general or officer position in the military, and again, overthrow all the Golds. So I want to move along more about my process of reading the book, how I felt about it, what I liked, what I didn't. So some more plot points will probably come up as I go, but I just didn't want to take too long on the general summary. So my process of reading it was given to me as a gift by someone who really likes the series, and I've heard that it's very, very popular. And I was like, cool, I like sci-fi. They were telling me what they liked about it, and I was like, okay, cool, that sounds very interesting, So I start reading it, and it's taken me a minute to kind of get into the world. I realize that, especially if it's a first book, if it's a whole new world of science fiction, you have to kind of sometimes let things breathe, because you're understanding, are we on a different planet? Does Earth exist? Are there different species? And you just kind of have to get a feel for what the author is trying to create for you. So all the drilling stuff at first was kind of interesting, but also I don't know, I thought it was a little slow. Now, some people think this book moves super fast, and I can see how people feel that way going throughout the book. It wasn't like I was bored. I was just kind of like, okay, drilling, get it. But then it kind of speeds up real fast, where he meets this guy. Oh man, I'm gonna forget a bunch of names. I think it's Dancer, maybe. And they got to take him to someone, again, to kind of cut him up and make him stronger and all that stuff, and do all the learning and all the tests and stuff. So that I actually found very interesting, but also parts of it I felt were very fast. It's oh, I would have actually liked maybe a little more time explaining this than all the drilling stuff. It doesn't matter too much, because you understand where this is heading, and you can tell by the way Brown writes, or at least it seems to me, that those other things are way more important. So he's just trying to get things going now. So if I'm being perfectly honest, the first half of the book, although not terrible and had moments and things I did really like, it was kind of sluggish for me. It's kind of slow. Wasn't a huge fan. I was wondering for, about almost half the book, I'm like, is this gonna be worth reading? I'm getting close to the halfway point. Am I gonna wanna finish? Again, I didn't hate it or anything, but I was just like, ugh, I don't know. and there's other reasons to that other than just the plot and the characters that made that difficult for me, which I'll explain a little bit later. The second half is much more engaging. There's a lot more that happens. And in my opinion, it's better because he did the legwork in the first part of the book of kind of getting you to understand the hierarchies of all the colors, the world, the planet, and how he needs to infiltrate the system and how it's going to be really, really hard. Now Darrow's on the way to the school. He's passed all these tests, and then it becomes kind of like a Hunger Games type story. It's this kind of battle royale amongst, these different houses of Golds. So it's not strictly everyone for themselves. They've got teams, and it's kind of like playing war. So that's interesting. Another thing I liked about the second half of the book more than the first were the character dynamics and character growth. The first part, everyone was a little bit shallow to me, even Darrow. And so you get to know the characters in the second half of the book more because they're just there longer. Second half of the book, you've got Cassius and Darrow's relationship, Mustang. She's actually one of my favorite characters in the whole book. I think she's very kind of mysterious at first, which is the point, but then as things go on, can she be trusted? Then you really think she can, and then there's another twist. It's like, oh no, I don't know if she can be trusted. And then ultimately it seems like she can. So that was kind of a fun journey. And also I like that she seems to be a very smart character. Even if she's young and makes mistakes, she adapts well and she's not easily deceived, and I just like admire that about the character. It's a very interesting character. I want to talk about the ending of the book a little bit more, but before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about like my reading experience and Pierce Brown's style. So there's parts where I could really get in a flow and read fast. I will say I'm not a big fan of when books are written like in first person, although I do like the original 3 Hunger Games books. Those are the only 3 I've read. It's not that it can't be a good story or good characters. But as I've gotten older and read more books, the enjoyment of reading in first person, it just kind of has decreased for me. And I've also read some books in first person that weren't that great. Obviously it's a creative choice, and I think some authors are better at it than others. Leading into Brown, like I said, I think this is his first book that was officially published. I know he wrote things before this, I just don't know if they were like published. So I'm not trying to knock the guy. He's got a very successful book series, okay? Like, good for him, that's great. But it felt a little clunky here and there. And part of that too was he uses a lot of like fragmented sentences and just phrases, or even just singular words back to back to back to back. People do that. It's again a stylistic choice, and sometimes it's very effective. I'm not saying it shouldn't be used, but there were times when it was just excessive. It was like something crazy would happen, like he fell deep, dark, down, dangerous. Like, you know, it'd be like 6 or 7 words, you know, or the same thing in like a phrase, like he ran, he jumped, he fought, he bled, he sneezed. You know, like I don't know, it's just like, dude, after like 5 or 6, I'm just like, please just write a sentence. Please just write, like, use a few, use 3, maybe 4, you know, like, but then just give me a sentence. Like, it would get distracting, and then kind of like, please just write something. And that's not to say that his whole style's bad. He wrote some things and they're kind of like, this is a beautiful sentence, you know, like this is great imagery. So again, I'm not saying it's the worst, it's just not my favorite. The other thing that bothers me a lot about this is, like, I know in sci-fi you create new words and terms and expressions, and I'm totally fine with that. He does a thing where he basically just puts 2 words together. No problem with that whatsoever, but as a reader, visually, it's super distracting to me when he does something like the word holocan, like a holographic thing and a can like a machine, you know, so holocan. But the H is lowercase and the C is uppercase. It's visually distracting. And he does that with like 80% of the words he creates. But yet there's a handful, or occasionally, again, it's just 2 words together, but the first letter is capitalized and not the letter of the middle word. And I'm confused. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no pattern that I can perceive. And not that that necessarily matters. You may be like, what are you on about? Who cares? Just read it. You might be right. I enjoy when things like that are just explained, even if they're explained poorly, if I'm being honest. It doesn't have to be a great reason. And I was telling this to a buddy of mine, and he just kind of laughed at me, and he was like, it's because you've read too much Tolkien. And I was like, this is true. I've read a lot of Tolkien, you know, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and Tolkien has a reason for literally everything. So, and I can't hold every other author to that. That's just too much. I get it. A couple more thoughts about Darrow and then the ending. Not to be mean, I know he's the main character. I love the title. I love the idea of, like, you know, rising up against depression. I get it. But I found Darrow to be kind of a boring character. I didn't really care about him, honestly. He's just full of rage, which, again, to me, there's not too much to that. And I know, and I appreciate that Brown, I think he did try. He tried to give it some layers. So I think that's another thing that helped me kind of hang in there. The problem is it didn't work super well for me. And, you know, the death of EO, that would obviously, anyone who has a heart, who loves someone else, like, that's going to cause you to want to do something, right? So there is motivation. But there's a lot of things that happen to him. Even in his inner dialogue, he's always kind of questioning, is this worth it? Like, if EO knew everything that I know now, would she feel the same way? Like, or would she have totally different thoughts? Would she be like, yeah, it's not worth it. Like, let's try to fight this battle some other way, but it's not worth you going to the academy. It's not worth you augmenting your body. Or like, who knows? But it just seems like his foundation, which is Eo's death, is extremely flimsy, because there's also a point in the book where I almost quit reading it because of like 2 words, I think. And basically it's just him cursing Eo. Because something bad happens. Oh, I think it's when he had to kill Cassius's brother in the was it called the culling or whatever? It's the test. They have to get rid of the weak. So he kills Cassius's brother, and he's mad about it, as he should be. He's like, I shouldn't have to, be forced to do something like this. I wouldn't be in this position and all this. And so then he curses Eo. And I'm like, what? It's like he's been idolizing her. She's like, he like worships her. And then all of a sudden he's like, not just mad at her, he's like cursing her. And that may seem simple to you. I'm sorry if it does, but for me, I'm like trying to get invested in this book. I'm already struggling with certain like literal reading issues of the way it's typed up and written, as well as, some clunky beginnings, and I'm starting to get into it. And then he does that. I'm like, isn't this the whole motivation for why you're doing what you're doing? Then why am I here? Why am I caring if you kind of now don't seem to care at all? I mean, obviously he brings it back where he still talks about how much he loves her, and then there's the interesting correlation of Mustang coming into the picture, and he has feelings for her, but then what about Eo, and it's complicated, and that stuff is interesting. But I just wish he hadn't have done that. I don't know, but maybe no one else had an issue with that. Okay, talking about the ending, I actually thought the ending was very interesting. Felt a little rushed at the end, which is okay. At least I got what I wanted out of it. And that is seeing Darrow getting the opportunity to infiltrate the Golds. And was it the Arch Governor? I forget all the titles and all the names, guys. There's a bunch. But he gets like an apprenticeship with the very person that he probably hates the most, right? And I was like, okay, well, that's good. That's interesting that he's able to stuff down his pride and do what needs to be done to actually accomplish anything of value on Mars or in the galaxy or whatever, to help the Reds and the other colors rise up. So I was like, okay, I'm glad he did that. I also, found it interesting that Mustang was his daughter. I'm like, okay, that complicates their relationship even more, so that was interesting. And then I started to see, I'm like, oh, these are the things that I would have really enjoyed more of in this book. I'm sure they'll probably play out in the next one and those to continue, but more of like, I don't want to say political, but just, again, the infiltration, the dynamics, the relationships, what it's actually going to take to bring the system down, to bring the empire, the Roman Empire down or whatever, to bring the Golds down, and to help, the Reds and other colors rise up, to help freedom fighters or whatever that looks like, because again, there's a lot to explore there. I was like, that's very interesting to me. And I wish there had been more of that. But if you're someone who was like really into the book, I can see how that's tantalizing and would get you right into the next one. But here's where we come to a problem. I got to the end of the book and thought, did I like this? And I know that may seem like a weird thing, but I was like, yeah, what did I think? And I was like, you know what? I did enjoy it. So I was able, because I questioned myself for a second. I was like, no, I think I did enjoy it. I just don't love it. And so I was like, that's fine. I was like, I can enjoy something and just not love it. But the issue was, I was intrigued. The ending was interesting. I was like, okay, well, it seems like there's going to be more of what I really wanted. It didn't take me forever to read this book, but it took me longer than it probably should have. I mean, 2-3 weeks, maybe, it didn't take forever, but I felt like I should have read it faster. And I was kind of pushing myself to read it, because I know some people can read this super fast, which is fantastic, but I had to put in that effort. And so I was thinking, do I want to continue the series? And my thought was, maybe I do. And so I'll explain. The problem is I have a stack of books on my TBR, plenty of things that I've been wanting to read for a while. And I was just like, I want to read those first. So I'm not in a rush is my point. Although that being said, who knows if anyone's watched this or made it even this far, but if you have, thank you so much. Truly, I really appreciate it. Like and subscribe if you're enjoying. But if you want me to continue, leave a comment down below. I told this whole predicament to the person who gave me the book. And they told me, hey, actually several people have said the same thing. Like they enjoyed the first one, but it wasn't their favorite. But then the next like 2 books apparently are incredible. And they said the same thing. The second book is their favorite book. So, I find that very intriguing. I'm like, okay, if there's an exponential leap in quality and story and all that stuff, I'm down. But like I said, before I do that though, I have some books that I'm reading and want to read. But if it's that good and you want me to read it, if you want to like get me into the world and be like, no, it's worth it, you'll change your mind and you'll be singing its praises. If that's you, if you think that'll happen, leave a comment below. If I get, let's say 20 comments, if I get 20 comments saying read Golden Son, that'll be my next thing. I'll jump on it as fast as possible and I'll get the word out to you guys. So in summary, overall, yeah, I enjoyed it. It's just not my favorite. Some of the things you may be like, hey, you're being a little petty. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It's just personal preference. I read a lot of books and I like sci-fi and I've read better sci-fi. Again, this isn't the worst book I've ever read. It's just, I think the hype might have been a little too much and that might have been the problem. So, but if the next ones are amazing, like I said, leave a comment and maybe we'll get on this thing. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I'm really trying to grow the channel and bring more quality content to you guys and be more consistent with that. And if you love Red Rising and you just want to talk about it, leave some comments. I always enjoy engaging with you guys and building this community. Thank you so much for your time and I'll see you guys in the next video.